guys, it's Erin, and I am going to do a May wrap-up for you. I read 13 books in the month of May. Actually, I probably read more than that. I think there's a couple of books I read on my Kindle that I forgot to put on Goodreads, but whatever. I am not going to talk about all 13 books in a lot of detail or even at all necessarily. I read a lot of books by volume, and I've decided that I'd like to still continue to do wrap-ups because I think it's a helpful way for me to share what I've been reading with you and to give you book recommendations. But because I read so many books, specifically the ones that I read that are kind of like for fun books that I just don't have a lot to say about. Like, I read it was fun. If you want to see everything that I read, or almost everything, follow me on Goodreads because I do put all of my books there, and usually I'll put a rating. I don't even rate my books all the time. I'm a very lazy book reviewer, as you can see. So anyway, just to get into this, I read 13 books. The first book that I finished in the month of May was West by Karis Davies. I had heard good things about this from somebody on BookTube, and it sounded just like a really lovely story. It's historical fiction and set in kind of like vaguely, I think, the early 1800s, and it's about a father who goes on this exploration trip to the west of America, and also about his daughter who stays behind. It sounded like it would be really kind of poignant and beautiful. It's very thin. I borrowed it from the library and it had to go back, so I don't have it, but cover. And I did like it mostly, but I found that it was kind of a lot more negative than I expected. I wanted it to be about the like beauty of exploration or like the joys of, you know, being a dreamer, but it wasn't about that. And the daughter's plot line, she's quite young and she hits like 12 or 13 and starts to go through puberty and suddenly is getting all this negative male attention, and I didn't see why her plot was necessary. I would have liked to follow her, but maybe have her have some kind of other struggle as opposed to that one. I didn't quite get what the book was trying to do, or I guess I did get what the book was trying to do, but I didn't like it. I didn't like that it was the father's choices were presented as this really kind of negative thing for both of them, and I don't know why it was necessary to tell a story like that. So anyway, I gave it 2 stars, I think. Yeah, it was very well written. I just didn't like it. The next book I want to talk about is This Beast, The Priory of the Orange Tree. I realize everybody's been talking about, oh my gosh, this book is so long. And it is. It's really long. It's divided into parts, and so it helps sometimes when you're reading a long book if you just like treat each part as like its own short book. It helps you move through it faster. I also read like 500 pages of this in one sitting because I just really liked it. It's so big, it's hard to hold. Anyway, this is an epic fantasy set in an epic fantasy world. 1,000 years ago, this worm or dragon and his kind of like other dragon followers tried to take over the world. And according to the religion of several countries in the west of this world, this knight, who became a saint, defeated the dragon, and as long as his heirs, who are always women, are on the throne of the kingdom that he founded, the world will be safe. But it's been 1,000 years, and there are signs that the dragon is rising. So the novel follows the queen, not from her perspective, but it does follow her. It follows a young woman who's from the Priory of the Orange Tree who's been sent to keep the queen safe, and she is one of our main perspective characters. It follows a nobleman from that kingdom who has his own adventure. Then it also follows people from the eastern continent who, instead of seeing all dragons as evil, revere the water dragons. So there's fire dragons and water dragons. So we follow a main character, a woman, who is becoming a dragon rider in the kind of like their military. So we have all of these perspectives, and there's 1 or 2 more main character perspectives, and as the situation in the world gets worse and worse, all of their parts move together and they come together eventually in the end to save the world. The end. Okay, Okay, that was my very vague, very basic description. The great things about this novel, most of them. The plot was very good. It was very tight. The characters were really interesting and different. I liked that we were following a lot of women. We had a couple of male main character perspectives. I saw a review somewhere where somebody pointed out that the men were more passive and the women were more active, which is true, although I liked all of them. The world building is just great. It's like there's very clearly influences from our world and from different cultures, but each culture is unique. And what's cool is because this is an epic kind of global fantasy almost, we don't just get one kingdom or one or two kingdoms, we're getting like a lot of different kingdoms. I don't know how many, 5 or something. And each one is a little bit different. The power structure works a little bit differently. There are different religions, there's different geographies, there's different like kinds of creatures, and it's just, it was really well done, really creative, really imaginative. I think I rated this 4 stars just because I didn't love and adore it the way I do some fantasies. Like Guy Gavriel Kay's Finnevar Tapestry, something just like in that story makes my heart sing, and I didn't feel that with this one. But I think it's a really good novel, and if you like fantasy, it would be worth checking out. The next book that I finished after that was Michael Chabon's The Gentleman of the Road. This is another really thin, more literary novel. It's also historical fiction, kind of. I don't know, like it's set around 1000 AD. All of the like kingdoms are real. I'm not sure if the main conflict is with real peoples. I'd have to like go back and check what the history of that is. I think it's not. I think it's imaginary, but it's not really fantasy either. So historical-ish fiction, and it's about these 2 gentlemen. They're friends. They're very opposite. One of the men is a Frankish Jewish surgeon, and the other is from, I think he's from Nubia? Someplace in Africa, also Jewish. Michael Chabon is a Jewish American writer, and most of his main characters, at least in the books that I've read so far, are Jewish. And they are basically con men. They have this con they go around doing to get money, and they're just kind of like enjoy traveling around. And then they get mixed up in this conflict between these 2 rulers, and they have to help this young man achieve his goal of taking back his family's, it's like they're tribal, so like his family's tribe for his older brother. And there's just lots of like madcap adventures and random stuff happens, and I enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as I've liked Chabon's other novels that I've read, but some of that might just be because it's really short, and one of the things he does really well is character, and so his characters are very vivid, but you don't feel like you get to know them as well as you do in his longer novels just because it's a short book. But if you like Michael Chabon, or you like historical fiction, or you like kind of like a buddy, it's not really a comedy, but like, you know, like a story about some friends who are doing crazy things, check it out. Then I finished The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. I had to get the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition just because I really like the mustard cover. The other one is like gray or something. Anyway, the mustard cover's great. This is V.E. Schwab's debut novel. It went out of print, and just due to her recent surge in popularity, it was reissued in this new really beautiful hardcover edition. It has like a ribbon bookmark and everything. It's really lovely, and I was just curious to read it, and I enjoyed it. I would give it 3 stars. It's for sure a debut novel, and she's gotten a lot better. It was interesting. That was one of the reasons I wanted it, was I was interested in seeing kind of like where her writing started. She was very young when she wrote this, I think, like just barely out of college too. So like it's good for all of those things, and I think I would have really, really loved it if I was like a teenager, because hello, it's young adult, so that's the target audience. And there wasn't really anything wrong with the story. The characterization was really good. The plot was pretty straightforward. This has definite like fairy tale vibes, and on the darker side, not the sparkly side. So in this village of Near lives this girl named Lexi, and she's dealing with the death of her father, which had happened kind of in the recent past. And then one day children start disappearing, and this stranger is blamed because he's a stranger, and so of course it's his fault because it couldn't be anybody else. But Lexi, the main character, starts to become friends with this stranger, who she calls Cole, and she realizes that it's not his fault because one of the children goes missing when he's with her. So obviously it's not. But nobody's gonna listen to her. Her village is very patriarchal. She's a girl and not interested in doing girly things. And so she works to figure out who is really taking the children, and she thinks it's the Near Witch, who was a witch who lived in their village and who killed children and was eventually banished and killed by the village elders, except Lexi realizes that maybe that isn't quite the way the story went. The story unfolds really well. The way that the story is constructed is very tight. It's very interesting. It's super atmospheric. I was reading this at night at one point and I was like, yeah, we're gonna wait until daylight to pick that up. I am a super huge scaredy cat, and so like this is not creepy or scary at all. It's just that was me being a wuss. And so anyway, I really enjoyed the story. It does have, and I feel like Schwab tends to have characters like this because I've seen it in some of her other books too, but the like authority figure who has no flexibility, who's just like, that's the way things are, deal with it, and the main character's like constantly pushing up against them. It's a good way to create conflict, but it drives me nuts, and I have a hard time reading characters like that, so that's one thing that diminished my enjoyment of this book a little bit. 3 stars, great debut, beautiful cover. This edition, I don't know if all of the editions have it, but this edition has a short story that gives the origin of Cole, and the short story was brilliant. It had a lot of the same themes and the same atmosphere as the novel, but Schwab wrote it recently, and so you can see just how her writing has improved. It's gotten more vivid and more atmospheric, and just like it just like intensified all of the things that she was already good at. She's gotten even better at, so that was cool. Okay, then I have been reading a good bit of kind of like, I don't know what to call it. It's like, it is romance, but it's not the like super heavy romance. It's like the rom-com kind of romance. Anyway, I don't want to talk about every single book because I think they're great, but because my channel focuses on classics and literary fiction, I think most of y'all probably aren't here to hear about a lot of romance. And also, like, I don't have a lot to say. I can tell you the plot of all of the novels that I've read, but you can also just like check out my Goodreads account and read the plot, and this video will be 10 minutes shorter. So I'm just gonna highlight a couple of the books that I really enjoyed and just found fun. I've really just been reading these to de-stress after school. I didn't want a lot of books that I had to think deeply and complexly about. I just wanted some fun, entertaining reads, and these were definitely that. So the ones that I really want to talk about are written by Penny Reid, and I think she's really great. I found her through a friend who just like posted about one of her books on Instagram, and I was like, that looks like a lot of fun, and it really is. She's a good writer. I've found that some of the romance that I've sort of like poked around with is just not well written, and that sometimes I can ignore it if the plot's really strong, but a lot of the time I can't anymore, just because I'm so immersed in words and language with my PhD program, and because I'm reading like high literary stuff all the time. I just notice when something's not very well written a lot. And so it's hard for me to read, even if it's a good story. But these are well written. The characters are really well rounded and well developed. There's some diversity. Some of the women are women of color. They're different sizes, different ages, and I really appreciate all of that. So the series that I've really enjoyed is the Winston Brothers series, which follows 6 brothers who live in rural Tennessee, and then so each novel follows one of the brothers who falls in love with somebody, and it also follows their love interest. So we get a dual perspective narrator. The series is actually a spin-off of her Knitting in the City series, which follows a group of 7 friends who have a knitting group together, and I really liked those too, but there's something about the Winston Brothers ones that I really just have enjoyed a lot. I'm not quite sure what it is. I almost think it is the dual perspective. I kind of like having both sides of the couple and like seeing what they each see in each other. So I'm kind of like talking about all of Penny Reid's novels that I have read so far, which is basically the Knitting in the City series and the Winston Brothers series that's been published. I think there's like 1 or 2 of them that I haven't read yet. And I've been reading these like since April, so I didn't read like 15 of them this month. Just figured I'd clarify that. So anyway, short, fun reads. I really liked them, and then I thought I would just highlight one that I have really enjoyed, I think the most. I think it's my favorite, and that's book number 3 in the Winston Brothers series. It's called Beard Science, and it follows brother number 3. It doesn't go in age order, but he happens to be the 3rd oldest brother, and also it's the 3rd book. His name is Cletus, and he's a little odd, and I think he's adorable. Super observant, super, he's described as like wily and clever, because of his background and like childhood experiences. He likes to kind of be in control and know that people can't get one up on him, and he also really, really hates bullies. And so he's like does some casual blackmail and just kind of like knows everybody's secrets and where all of the bodies are buried in their small community. But he's also just like really nice, and he'll meddle in a positive way if he needs to, and usually does. He's kind of like always meddling or like solving other people's problems like throughout the entire series. And then the main female character is her name is Jennifer Sylvester, and she's a baker and has been a baker since she was young. She won some like county fair prize when she was a teenager, and her parents own a bakery, and she's kind of just been like working there for free. Her father's like emotionally abusive, which she figures out over the course of the novel, and that's kind of like her character arc, is learning like who she is and recognizing that like she loves her parents, but they haven't actually treated her very well. I like watching her kind of like come into her own. She's just like a, I don't know, fun character. She's also she's very observant. People find her strange. She doesn't know where quite all of the bodies are buried, but she knows where a lot of them are. And so I liked this one. I think this story also, for a couple of reasons, has that like really fun family vibe. You get that in all of the novels, which I think is something that I like about them, that either like found family with the Knitting in the City series, where the women always have each other's backs, and like as they start getting into relationships throughout the series, like guys start to become friends, and then here it's like a genuine family. But because of Jennifer's particular circumstances, the family really like comes around and helps her out, and I just like seeing that kind of story, like the found family story. Anyway, so those were the fun kind of fluffy novels. And then the last novel that I finished this month was The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I gave this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. This is a classic novel from the Victorian period. It's kind of a mystery. Walter Hartright, the main character, is on his way home from saying goodbye to his mother and his sister. He is about to leave to go to a country house to be a drawing instructor to the 2 women who live there. And on his way home from his mom's house, he comes across this woman in white. She's dressed all in white, and she asks him for help, and he takes her to a cab stand. They're in London, and that's kind of all. But during that interaction, he learns that she had escaped from an asylum, and she also, I can't remember how it comes up, but he learns that she has a connection to the very place that he's going. And he knew the mother, or she knew the mother of the women that he's going to go teach when she was young, like 10 years before. And so he goes to Limeridge House, this place in the country, and can't get the encounter out of his head, so he asks one of the women, Marion, to help him figure out who she is, and the story kind of goes from there. It was very sensational, very entertaining, and I'm going to do a full video review of this in a couple of weeks, so I'll kind of like cut that review short. But anyway, I really liked it. If you're looking for a classic that's kind of like a page turner and is more plot than character, definitely go for something like The Woman in White. I'd highly recommend it. So that's it. That was some of the 13 books that I read this month, and I hope you liked it. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!